Hey everybody, welcome to Reason Theology. Your host Michael Lofton. My studio has been crashed.
I had to come down here to see if these books were fake.
I got Keith Nestor with me. He is the official book inspector. Keith, can you test out some of those books for me real
Okay,
quick?
like this is not pre-planned.
Uh-huh.
I'm going with like this one over here. We're going with this one. They're real, my friends. You heard it from the man.
There it is. So
No, I just had to come down to Monroe, Louisiana. I mean, everybody wants to come here.
Doug Dynasty, right? I mean, how could you not? Believe it or not, though, as odd as it may sound, we actually do get a lot of people from out of town. Used to,
Really?
It was because of Doug Dynasty, but now it's more so, I think, because they have other things in the area. They have a pavilion and stuff like that. So there's actually a lot of people who are out of town. I don't know if you noticed on the way over here, a ton of hotels on I-20. Not really far from here. Well, depending on which way
we didn't come in I-20. We came from south. We were in Lafayette.
Okay.
So we came up.
Okay. So how did that go, by the way?
Oh, it was amazing. We were at the cathedral yesterday, doing the rosary there for Ash Wednesday, and it was just awesome. I love the folks down there. We had the best time ever.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've been just kind of traveling in your RV, going to various places. Is that right?
Yeah. So in the beginning of January, my wife and I and our little dog, we just took off, and we've been stopping at different churches. We started in Des Moines, Iowa, and we went all the way down to the tip of Texas in McAllen. We were there praying the rosary when that meteorite hit.
Oh,
I had no idea. We were deep in prayer. The Holy Spirit was, overwhelming our group. We came out and someone said, yeah, a big meteor just landed not far from here.
I didn't even hear about this.
Yeah, it was in the news.
But then again, I live under a rock.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I don't hear about a whole lot of things.
so we've been to Tulsa, we've been to Kansas City, we've been to Dallas, we've been to Sugar Land, Texas.
Wow.
Lafayette, Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be in Atlanta, Texas tomorrow, which I didn't even know there was in Atlanta, Texas. And then Little Rock, Arkansas on Sunday.
Little Rock, I've been there before, but I haven't heard of an Atlanta, Texas. That's a new one.
Yeah,
for me.
It's a little town. So we're having a blast. We've been just traveling around. So this is what we do. My wife and I in 2020, when the Rosary Crew started, we wanted to get around to visit with people. So for those of you that don't know, that's our online live stream Rosary ministry that we started completely by accident in the pandemic. And we've been praying the Rosary online every day for almost 3 years. We haven't had a day off.
Wow.
And when everybody was locked down, we were getting sick of being stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So we sold a building that we had for our photography business and bought this RV, this used RV. And we have taken, I think this is our 4th or 5th trip. We'll take off for about a month at a time and just meet up with our Rosary Crew members in different churches. We have a map of where people are that say, hey, come pray with us. And
that sounds fun.
We have a blast. So everywhere we've been going, we've had just awesome time praying with folks.
How many miles have you put in so far?
On this trip, about 2,500.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And we've got to get home still. So we'll be home on Monday. But
now tell me where home is again.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Gotcha. I wonder how far of a drive that really is from here, but it's quite a ways, I'd imagine.
It's about, I think it's, our last stop is Little Rock, and that's like 9 hours, 9.5 hours away. So yeah, it's a lot, but we love it. We have a great time. I love getting to meet people. You see all this.
Sure.
It's great because you go on the internet, you see people like I obviously know you from the internet, but then when you actually get to meet people and
to see that they're real and not made of cardboard,
and make sure their books aren't fake.
Yeah. People saying that I'm made of cardboard too. So you've been able to verify that isn't true. And look at this. We actually have a original Rosary Crew member. Awesome.
She's one of the Australia crew. It's going to be a while before I can get the van over there. I got to figure something out.
Australia?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Murray's from Australia.
Might have to also put the van on a boat to get there. Yeah.
We had to take a boat when we were down in, we were on Mustang Island by Corpus Christi, Texas. You take a ferry to get out there. It was awesome.
Oh, wow. And by the way, y'all can also send some chat questions. We're happy to answer questions and all that. So make sure to put them, however, to at Reason and Theology. That way I can pick them out in the chat. Look at this from David. You guys are both some of my favorite Catholic YouTubers. Great to see you together.
Oh,
yeah,
thank
it's
you,
pretty
David.
awesome.
Thank you, David. We're going to be praying the rosary together at Michael's Chapel at 5 o'clock.
Absolutely. 5 p.m. Central. And by the way, go and check out the Instagram, or Keith's Instagram, where we just did a little skit on it. It was pretty cool. Let's see. We know of Michael Mofton, but is there a Neath Vester? That is funny. So again, so as you know, some people think that my books are made of cardboard. Well, the next level conspiracy theory was that I made a cardboard, and my cardboard self is called Michael Mofton, according to the fans. There's an imposter Michael Lofton. His name is Michael Mofton, according to the fans on the channel. But now we started a next level conspiracy. There might be a Neath Vester. So.
No, my imposters use my actual name, so there is one out there.
Just makes it all the more confusing, though. Kyle says, Keith, if you find yourself in St. Louis, hit me up and I'll make you the best steak you've ever had.
Okay. That's pretty tempting, Kyle.
I was actually just in St. Louis the other day, and it turns out that a whole bunch of other Catholics were there, and I had no idea. I was just driving through. They were there for some large conference. I forget the name of it, but they were all there for a conference. I think Frad was there. Everybody, Seek. Yeah. And I was there, and I started noticing, some Catholics, because there were some priests wearing collars, and I thought, well, maybe this is just a Catholic place. But yeah, it turns out that right down the road, all of the Catholics were present. So yeah, I wish I had known that. Let's see. Cardboard can't verify other cardboard. Right?
Oh, man.
So again, we started a new conspiracy here that you're made of cardboard.
Sean, how did this happen?
What's the difference between Austria and Australia? Right.
I'm going to Austria in September.
Is that right? What are you doing in Austria?
I'm going to be giving 2 talks at a parish there.
Okay.
About 30 miles from Switzerland.
Wow.
And so I'm really excited about that. Never been to Austria before. So my wife and I are going to go there and do these talks, and we're going to try to stick around a little bit and see some stuff. Do you
get the opportunity to travel abroad often?
No. Which is funny. We just led a pilgrimage to Our Lady of Guadalupe in January. We had 38 pilgrims that went with us. That was an amazing trip. We're going to be doing another one to the Holy Land in February of next year, I believe.
Okay.
And we've got Austria. So, but it's starting to pick up. I was supposed to do some stuff in Canada during the pandemic, but we had to do it virtual.
So how can people, by the way, sign up for that Israel trip? I'm curious.
Well, it's not officially live yet. I'm still working the details out, but believe me, I'll be letting everybody know about that.
Sure.
When that happens.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Anthony says he needs to upgrade the van to a tour bus. He's hitting the country like a rock star.
I can't afford a tour bus, brother.
But it's kind of like one.
It's a little one. Yeah,
it's
cool,
it's like a little tour bus. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
it's tour bus for us.
Chris says, love Keith Nestor and his conversion story. That's right. I think I actually had you on to talk about your conversion story, by the way. So if y'all want to check that out, just type in Reason Theology Keith Nestor. It will come up.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Let's see, 2 of the best people on YouTube. Awesome.
God bless you both.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate
thank you so
that.
much.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, well, Mauricio asks, what would Keith advise someone who doesn't pray the rosary every day, is not against it, but prays a different devotion? Is the rosary a non-negotiable?
Yeah, great question, Mauricio. I would say, but the short answer is this. My advice is do whatever's going to draw you closer to holiness with God. I don't think the rosary is non-negotiable, okay? But I think it's awesome. And I would say try it. And if it's something that connects with your spirit and draws you into that closer relationship with Our Lady and our Lord, then maybe it's something that you want to continue. But there are so many awesome devotions out there you can participate in. That's just one of them. I think it's awesome. And, we do that every day. But I would never tell somebody that you have to pray the rosary or, you don't have a real faith. There's other things that you can do. But my advice would be give it a try and see what you think about it. And don't be freaked out about it. It's something that it'll take you, I'd say try it more than once or twice. Try it for like 30 days and see what happens in your faith. And I bet you will find graces upon graces that have transformed your life.
Ever heard of John Pridmore? That does not ring a bell.
That sounds familiar to me.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar to me, but Lots of things do.
Somebody asked, is Keith's mic off? No, it is. I'm seeing it on the soundboard. Let me know if you're only hearing them from me, then that's a problem.
I'm pretty loud, so you probably hear if the mic was across the other.
Let's see. Hey, Keith, you mentioned Canada. Any plans to come up in the somewhat near future? I'm pretty north of Edmonton.
I don't have anything booked to go to Canada right now, but I need to get up there. We got a lot of Rosary Crew people up there, and I would love to do that, but nothing's on the calendar officially at this point.
Molly says, Keith, your story is incredible.
Oh, thank you, Molly. I appreciate that.
And we also have Marie, who said, so glad to see Keith with Michael. So many of my favorite Catholic YouTubers. I flirted with schismatic anti-Vatican II thinking. Oh, yeah,
I don't think you have to worry about that with us.
Yeah, no.
And even with that, it's interesting. Michael and I were talking about that. Michael attends an Eastern liturgy. I attend a TLM, but both of us, even though, but I also go to the Novus Ordo too, and I think that there's a place out there, a bigger place than people think there is for folks who love the TLM or an Eastern liturgy, but at the same time don't have hatred for the Novus Ordo when it's done appropriately, you know what I mean? And recognizing the reverency that can be affiliated. Because so many Catholics, that's how I came into the church. And I'm not going to be like one of those guys that's like, oh, well, the Novus Ordo, like, that's the only mass I ever saw when I became Catholic. And it was enough for me to feel like this is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. VM says, I can't grow a beard. Am I still on the team? You're definitely still on the team. Absolutely.
My beard's cardboard, so it's not real. So don't feel bad.
Mason says, remember, we have to cover for Bishop Barron's money laundering scheme to support Michael. That's right. Yeah. We just gave you a shout out. Yeah, good to see you, Mason. And if y'all aren't familiar, I did a community post just a few days ago where I have me in the thumbnail with a whole bunch of Barron bucks, where Bishop Barron is on the $100 bill.
Listen, if you could put a word into him, because I could get a bigger RV since you've got the hookup with Bishop Barron's money. So,
as I say, I'm pretty sure Bishop Barron has never heard of me, but if he does want to give me some Barron bucks, I'm all for it. Here's the picture, by the way, just so you can see. In fact, I'll try to save this real quick and share it with everybody so everyone can see it here on the stream, and it's not just me showing it to you.
Oh, that's hilarious.
You can add a little picture here in the overlay. There we go. And should be able to see it in just a second. There it is.
There it is. Boom. You look like the Godfather or something here with all this money.
Barron bucks. There we go. Let's look at
some Barron bucks.
I know, right? Let's see. We are the Lofton team, VM says. Indeed. I thought the saying was we are the problem. Because Michael Lofton's a problem.
You're the problem, not the problem.
No, everybody who's an R&D viewer is in the problem. So
maybe I'm part of the problem now since I'm sitting here with you.
Yeah. Hashtag we are the problem. Let's see. David says, my preferred liturgy is Byzantine Catholic. I love it so much, but subjectively, I sense God's presence just as much in the Novus Ordo, more good / better than good / bad. I think that there's nothing wrong with a person saying that I gravitate more towards one liturgy over the other, as long as you recognize they're all equally valid and admirable and venerable. There's nothing wrong with a person preferring one liturgy over the other. There's some things that might speak to one person more than another, and that's perfectly fine. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, what drew me in initially to the TLM was the music, to be honest with you, which is pretty funny because I was a Protestant worship leader for a long time too. So I love like contemporary worship done well. I love that kind of stuff. I love those experiences. All the ones that the Catholics bashed when they go, oh, look at this is Protestant. That's what I did. And so I love that kind of stuff. But when I went into the Novus Ordo, sometimes like in normal parishes, sometimes the music can be kind of tacky.
Yeah.
And that was a struggle for me. Yeah. But when I found the TLM, instantly I was like transported into this completely otherworldly worship experience with the Gregorian chant. And I fell in love with it right away. And so that drew me in. But then once I was in, then I started to learn more about the liturgy. And I remember my wife and I, we went to adoration one night, and we were just learning about, we'd been going to TLM for a few months. And we went to adoration one night, and we just grabbed one of the little red books, the missals that tells you what all the readings in English and Latin, which of course we read all that stuff, but we started reading the things on the right-hand side, the explanations of why we did that stuff. And we both were like, this is incredible. So we fell in love with the music, but then that drew us into the liturgy. So like that was a part of it. It wasn't a reaction to how bad things were in another place. Mm-hmm. It was just something positive. So like for me, I like to talk about my love of the TLM, not as I'm running away from something, but of something I ran to. Because I think here's the deal. If you're the kind of person that is motivated by leaving a problem, then no matter where you are, eventually a problem will arise, and right. You will have that same tendency that will prompt you to want to leave again. And that's what we see, like with all of these offshoots, even within traditional Catholicism or whatever, people are like, oh, well, I have to go, then you have Saint Vacanus, and then you have guys that break away from them, and you have this and that. And it all comes down to this idea of I'm running away from something. I didn't run away from Protestantism, you guys. I ran to Catholicism, and I didn't run away from the Novus Ordo. I ran to the TLM, but because it's still a Catholicism, I can still appreciate the good things about it, but it's just what I was drawn to. So I don't ever want to be somebody who says that, well, because I was drawn to this particular thing and you weren't, that I'm somehow more holy than you or more filled with grace than you. That makes sense?
That's a really good point about rather than running away from something, one should be running towards something. There is certainly a huge difference in the mentality there, because you're right. If you're just running away from something, the problem is you're going to continue to do that because you're going to continue to see problems with whatever you're currently in. So that's a really helpful distinction. Here's another one. This is from John. Which are your favorite prayers after the rosary? Do you like the seven sorrows?
So every day at the Rosary Crew, we do obviously the Hail Holy Queen, the Memorare, and then we do the normal prayer. I don't even know what it's called. Mm-hmm. The one where you say, "Oh God, who by His only begotten Son has." I don't know what that's called. Resurrection. Yeah. I don't even know what it's called. Sure. But the ending prayers of the Rosary, and then we do the Saint Michael prayer. But then on Fridays on the Rosary Crew is we all collectively apply our prayers to the souls in purgatory. So earlier this year, we started doing the St. Gertrude prayer, which is a prayer that is some believe, or if some have been talked to about, that releases 1,000 souls from purgatory when you pray that. I don't know if that's objectively true, but it's a great prayer to offer up for the souls in purgatory. So those are the ones that we do on the Rosary Crew.
This is another one from Full Metal. Hello, Keith. Which saint inspires you the most? That may not necessarily be your favorite, but just the one who you wish you could emulate the most.
Man, I wish I could emulate Saint Francis of Assisi the most, just because he's so radically holy and so radically detached from the world that when I started reading about him, I initially was put off by his level of detachment and holiness. I thought I could never be like this guy. So I guess we all have those moments when we're learning about the saints, when we go, I don't feel like I could ever measure up to this person. So what do? I either have to ignore him because it's too intimidating, or I can just be inspired.
This is a funny one from David. I want the Baron Bucks image to hang on the walls of my house. Everyone would be so confused, but I would laugh every time I look at it. I agree. Everyone would be confused.
That would be fun. You got to get merch with that on it, Michael.
I think so, yeah. Is Australian or American steak better?
I've never had Australian steak. I mean, I've been to Outback, but that probably doesn't count. If you go to Outback in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, is that really Australian steak?
I don't know. I don't know if that really qualifies. Maybe we could ask Matt Fradd.
Ask Marie. She lives in Australia.
Yeah, Maria, let us know there. Let's see.
I bet you could ask Matt Fradd, but he probably only goes to like the super like schwanky expensive steakhouses that fly in their steak from other places. So maybe it wouldn't. I don't know.
Here's one. from VM, I have found over time, 3 years after reversion, that I prefer less operatic uh, style extraordinary masses since it becomes a distraction for me being present at mass. I guess you mean like the Mozart masses kind of style. Is that what you're referring to?
Prefer
Maybe
less operatic.
yeah,
Maybe he refers to like a low mass, you know?
maybe. I actually have been to St. John Cantius where they had a Mozart mass. I thought it was pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah, it was interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think they have them annually, in fact.
I've been to St. John Cantius. It's only about 3 hours from my house, maybe a little bit more. I should go there for that if they heard that. We do a
It's how many
we
hours
did a
away?
Palestrina, like three and a
Three,
half
three and a
hours.
half?
Yeah,
That's not bad. Yeah.
it's not too far. Our parish, we did our Latin mass. I was in the choir for a little while. We did like all the like Palestrina, all the ones, but they did a Mozart one, I believe, with the orchestra and everything. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. Here's one from Isaac. Does this mean Michael's gonna be on the Rosary Crew today?
It does. It does. I crashed his pad and said, dude, here's the deal. You're on the Rosary Crew today.
We're gonna do it. So yeah, send some more chat questions again to @Reason and Theology. Here's one with saints. Some of them feel impossible to match because you're not that kind of person anyway. But it's always possible to attain that level of love, not a competition.
Amen.
Anyway. Yeah, what do you think about that? Because sometimes, in fact, in many cases, a lot of the saints were religious or priests or bishops, and so they certainly had a different state of life than most of us. What do you think about that? Is there a major disconnect there, or really not really? We could take whatever is applicable in their lives and still apply it to us.
One of my favorite things about Catholicism is that our saints are from all different walks of life. They're from different intellectual capacity. I mean, we were talking the other day with some friends about the difference between Saint Monica and Saint Augustine.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Saint Monica is a prayer warrior, and her son is this mountain of intellect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're both saints.
Yeah.
You know, we also can talk about people like Saint Maria Goretti, who was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a saint because of her heroic purity and forgiveness. So everybody, I think, we're all called to be saints, you guys. We're all called to be saints. But our pathway to sainthood is different. Some people's pathway is through their intellect. Some people is through their fearlessness. Some people is through their holiness from a standpoint of like personal reverence or detachment from the world. And you're not called to be somebody else. You're called to be who God's made you to be. And that path that he wants to lay before you is what you need to be searching. So be inspired by lots of different saints, my friends. And then what that will do in you is will show you that there's a path for you.
That's helpful. And, it reminds me of the, I think it's First Corinthians where Paul talks about how there's some gifts that are given to this group of people, and then this kind of gift is given to others. So some might have the gift of preaching, others might have a gift of mercy, others might have a gift of leadership, and he names different gifts. Not everybody in the body of Christ has to be an eye. Not everybody is a foot or a hand or a tongue. Each is given a different gift according to their purpose by the Holy Spirit. And I think it's kind of close to what you're saying there about the saints. We might not necessarily be like St. Augustine in his intellect, for instance. However, we could be closer to maybe St. Monica and her perseverance for interceding for individuals. So yeah, it's helpful to look at different saints and kind of see which one God has really gifted you with. When it comes to a charism. Filthy mouth schoolboy makes it up, says that's a funny name. Okay, I'm studying different saints now, and there's so many, it's hard to know what work to study first. Do you have any recommendations there?
Yeah. I think you should start with someone that you know personally that you look up to in the faith and ask them. And because here's what can happen. They can direct you to good resource, because just saying randomly, I want to learn about saints. Well, where do you go? And who do you study? But if you say, oh, well, this person in my parish has a devotion to St. Francis or St. Teresa or whatever, you can ask that person, say, hey, what books do you have? So that's what I did. I have a friend in our Rosary crew who, when I mentioned that I wanted to learn more about St. Francis, she gave me a bunch of books and she was like, hey, these helped me a lot. So that's what helped me to dig in. So I would say talk to someone that you can learn from personally who has been where you are and can help you walk through that.
Yeah, that's helpful. This is from Jacers. I'm currently leading a faith study and I'm working towards bringing on Adventist and a lapsed Catholic back into the church. Please pray for me. I'll need support not to mess up. So yeah, absolutely. We certainly will. Any advice there, by the way, on maybe help bringing lapsed Catholics back in?
Yeah, I think so. Lapsed Catholics, right? Bringing the person back into the church, I think is fascinating because you're going to actually help them discover things that they probably have some level of familiarity with, but no idea what it means. So my wife was, I don't even know if I would call her a lapsed Catholic because she never really practiced her faith, even though she was Catholic, went to Catholic school for 12 years. And then when I met her, I said, hey, come with me to my mega church. It's awesome. And she did. And she never thought about Catholicism ever again. But then 20 years later, when I became Catholic and brought her with me, in her case, sort of back to the church, it was hard for her, but she started going, oh, I never knew why we did that. So I would say, like, bring meaning to that person around the things. Like, ask them, say, what have you always wondered about why we do what we do? And then teach them the why behind the what, and lights are going to start going off in their mind. It'll be awesome.
This is from Ray. How do you best define a reverent Novus Ordo? If Novus Ordos were more broadly celebrated ad Orientem with Latin chant, communion rail, etc., that the TLM would the same TLM have the same draw? Yeah, I certainly have some thoughts, but I mean, what do you think here?
Okay, so a lot of those elements you mentioned, I think, are right in line. Like for me, Reverend Novus Ordo. Yeah. I mean, if I find one that's which on this trip, it's interesting. So I went to a Novus Ordo in Houston that was ad Orientem, communion on the tongue, at kneeling rails, Latin chant. It was amazing. And I'm like, this is great. But, to me, I guess the hallmark of that deals with the priest himself. If you can tell if a priest is like in love with Jesus when he is saying the words of consecration and performing the mass, or if he's just kind of mailing it in. So I kind of start there. But if it's a mass where I can come forward and receive on the tongue on my knees and feel like that's okay there, then I'm good,
Oh yeah. That mass in Houston sounds awesome.
It was amazing. Yeah, St. Teresa's Church in Sugar Land, Texas, amazing.
I have to check that out next time in Houston. I tend to go to St. John Chrysostom out there. Shout out to the guys who go to Chrysostom. In fact, one of my friends, James Battle, who's been on the show multiple times, he certainly recommends that location. So y'all check it out if you haven't been there already. Now, here, some of my thoughts here, as far as reverent, I wouldn't necessarily say those things define reverence, because I could say that even though I don't prefer versus populum, I think ad Orientem is really how all Novus Ordo should be. I don't think a versus populum is non-reverent or irreverent. So I wouldn't put it in that category. And if there's communion on the hand, it's done properly, I don't think that's irreverent either. I mean, that's the venerable tradition of the first millennium. Now, it can be done irreverently, communion on the hand, right? But then communion in the hand done properly, not necessarily irreverent. And communion rail, all those things, I think they're good. So if you were to ask me, however, what do I think is the ideal Novus Ordo, I would say, yes, communion rail, communion on the tongue, Gregorian chant, ad Orientem. But if you're talking in terms of reverence versus maybe irreverent, I would put it in the discussion in the category of people are abusing the sacrament, being entirely careless with the sacrament. That's irreverent.
That's a fantastic point.
Yeah. And, if there's stuff that's being done or celebrated or praised in the liturgy that's heretical or immoral, that's going to be an irreverent Novus Ordo. And so that's kind of what I think of when I think of reverent versus irreverent.
That's so important that you made that distinction, that nuance, because I watched the show too, you guys. Because reverence is about what's going on in your heart. Okay, so Ray, your question about reverence, you were attaching reverence to like an objective thing that's an external thing, which I get where you were at with that. But I think what Michael's pointing out is that real reverence is about something that's going on internally, not externally. There are things that we can do or not do externally that reveal that reverence. But that's 100% right, because you could have a ad orientem priest that's completely irreverent, because in his heart, he's, got sin, he's angry, he's bitter, he believes heresy. You name it, right? Just because it's ad orientem doesn't necessarily make it reverent.
Yeah.
So I think that's important distinction to make, but I think those are the things that we associate with that.
Certainly they're associated. And I think it's because you tend to see priests who are doing the ad orientem, more Gregorian chant, Latin, communion on the tongue, those tend to be the ones that take the faith more seriously.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's not plenty of Novus Ordo priests who don't take the faith seriously, who do versus populum and things like that. What I'm saying, however, is in many of those cases, they're not in a position where they can do ad orientem or on the tongue or things like that. But again, what I am saying is, in the opportunities where you do have a priest who does have the ability to make do a liturgy ad orientem versus populum, they tend to be the ones who take things more seriously. And so because of that, I think we tend to associate those things with piety more.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because you're going to find irreverent people that do some of those reverent things, and you're going to find reverent people that don't do some of those things.
Father Brown, he says, "Hey, glad I caught this live. Nestor is the man."
Oh, thank you, Father. God bless you. Thank you so much. That's very nice of you.
And looks like we got a super chat here. Thank you for that, from Christian Catholic.
Oh, hey,
Media.
what's up, brother? How you doing?
Yeah, enjoying the convo. Great job. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Let's see. Keith, I have to know, if Pope Francis dips his fries in mayonnaise, is he still the true Pope? Yeah, weigh in for us. We had this brought up the other day. I don't know. Do you know about the mayonnaise and French fries discussion?
Look, I don't know anything about that, but you're already off to the wrong track, because it should be Miracle Whip anyway.
Is that right? Okay.
That's a debate in my house, because I love Miracle Whip. My wife hates it, so we don't ever have it. But like, I love that tangy zing.
So would you dip French fries in Miracle Whip? Okay, all right.
I like to dip French fries in ranch. In Iowa, where I live, you dip everything in ranch dressing, So
yeah, fries and ranch. That is
happening.
Especially if it's Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Chris Tuttle says Keith Nestor.
Thank you,
is
Chris.
great. Where was it in Houston? Tell us the name of that parish again.
It was in Sugar Land, Texas. It was St. Teresa's parish in Sugar Land, Texas. Gabe Castillo from Gabi After Hours is he's the youth director there, and we did the rosary and did some stuff there. And I just fell in love with that parish. It was amazing. I mean, all the parishes we've been to on this trip have been awesome. It was great.
I enjoy watching both of you.
It was Grandma Lynn. Yeah. Grandma Lynn's the one who kind of got us going on this RV thing.
Is that right?
She's in Canada, and she sent me an email one day and said, "I had a dream that you were coming to visit me."
Okay.
And that's what got Estelle and I talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, man, we got to do that. And it's funny because I shouldn't say funny because it's not funny, but we haven't been able to get up there yet. So we need to get up there and see Grandma Lynn.
What would you advise Catholics who are getting bitter about liturgy wars in the church? Not rad trads per se, but people who are scandalized by excesses of rad trads. Yeah, what do you think?
I would say this: shut it off. Just shut it off and worship Jesus. Go to Mass, worship God, practice your faith with holiness, devotion, and reverence, and let all that other stuff just go over your head. You don't need to weigh in on that. You don't need to watch it. You don't need to respond to it. You don't need, if it's causing you anxiety or scandal, then just shut it down. You don't have to get involved with it.
Yeah, it seems like if it's to the point where it's starting to really impact your spiritual health, I've always found it beneficial to just shut off all social media entirely for a month. Do nothing but pray, worship, spend time with family and friends, but get disconnected from the constant bombardment of social media sources that are constantly telling you about this or that scandal
Yeah.
in the church. And when you've detached yourself from that, you'll feel a whole lot better.
Great advice. I used to give a talk in my youth ministry days called How to Tell the World to Shut Up. And it was basically, I would give this talk to like high school kids. And this was before social media was like super prominent, before smartphones even. I'm an old man. And that's basically what I told them. Do a 30-day media fast.
Yeah.
From all media,
Yeah.
not just social media, but from all media.
Sure.
And see how you feel at the end of that.
Yeah.
Except for my YouTube channel and Michael's.
That one exception. This is from David. Remember, God loves all his children, so don't test that love by putting mayo on your fries.
we might have to go get some French fries later.
I know, right?
I'm starting to get hungry.
Hey, I'm right there with you. Let's see here. Miracle Whip does not equal mayonnaise. VM says. I
know. I'm a heretic for that.
Is there really a difference? I'm not up on the debate. Is there
Miracle Whip?
Yeah, so it's not the same thing.
No, it's not.
I thought it's just like a different brand of mayonnaise.
No, Miracle Whip it's actually branded as salad dressing, which I've never seen anybody who actually put Miracle Whip on a salad.
Okay.
But you put that on a ham sandwich, man, it's gonna make you see, glory. I'm telling you.
I learned something new today. Keith needs to make his own mayo. Egg yolk, Dijon mustard, pinch of salt and pepper, tiny splash of vinegar. Avocado oil mix in until consistency is correct. It's got that bite.
I love everything that guy just said, or that girl just said. Jason's.
I'll take your word on that one. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to try that. Let's see. Miracle Whip is the polka mass of all mayonnaise options.
Is polka mass good or bad?
Is there really such a thing as a polka mass?
Yeah, I'm like, what?
Is that really a thing? Surely
it probably is.
surely
It's probably
not.
on Twitter somewhere.
I hope not, but you know what? I'm not surprised these days. Okay, so here's one for you. Question for you, Keith. When attending,
Michelle, good to see you.
When attending a mass that has music with drums and guitar and music done in a way I wouldn't find reverent, how do you shut off the uncharitable thoughts in your head?
Great question. Michelle, you tell me when you figure out how to shut off the uncharitable thoughts in your head when you see something at the church you don't like. We all go through that. And I think what you have to do is focus on the Lord, of course, but also focus on this. For somebody in there right now, they're worshiping God, and that's meaningful to them, and they're part of your Catholic family. So just give grace and say, I understand that the thing I like is not the thing that everybody likes, which consequently means the thing that other people like is not necessarily the thing I like. Now, I get it. I get what you're saying. The only time I've ever walked out of a church, okay, was when I walked into a church before it was. Full disclosure, mass hadn't started yet. It's getting ready to start. I was traveling, walked into a church, and there was this obnoxious, praise worship music happening with drums and guitar that was just not awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like contemporary music too, but it was just distracting and tacky and awful. And I'm like, all right, we're going somewhere else, and we did. But if I had to deal with it, and we've all been there, Michelle. Sometimes you just have to just go, okay. I thank God. Here's what I'll tell you. I thank God that I'm a Catholic, and in spite of the things that are going on here that I'm struggling with, I get to receive Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist. Nothing's going to stop that.
It's a good point. And it looks like our mutual friend Jose is watching.
Oh, we were just talking about you, Jose.
Yeah, we were.
Praise God for you.
I was on his show last night. Great guy. So first of all, go and check out his channel in Spanish, La Fe de la Iglesia. So what he did is he invited me to come on and do my conversion story, but he translated it all live.
He did the same thing for
Spanish.
me. Yeah.
And I was impressed because he has a good memory to sit there and take 3 or 4 sentences that I just gave and translate them all.
Yeah.
It's pretty good memory.
Now we are
So I
giving
was
you the
impressed.
benefit of the doubt, Jose, that you were doing it right.
I understood I understood a little bit here and there because it's a lot of it was similar to Latin, so I could understand a fair amount of it, and it sounded like he was translating me accurately.
I
So,
always get nervous when I do a translation video with somebody, or I'm giving a sermon and somebody's translating,
yeah,
and I say like, 9 paragraphs, and then they just say 3 words. I'm like, did you miss something? And they're like, no. That just means that whatever I said was unnecessary. They edit me.
That's funny. Let's see. Mayonnaise is Low Church Baptist Mega Church of French fried dipping sauce. Miracle Whip is a small town charismatic.
Low Church Baptist. So which one would be like the the High Church Anglican equivalent? Would that be like honey mustard or something like that?
I'm going with the ranch that Chick-fil-A puts out. They have the best dipping sauce.
All right, I got a question for you. About you're in the South. What are you doing messing around going to Chick-fil-A?
I know, right? I love Chick-fil-A, and here's why. When I lived in New York City, they at least at the time in the location that I was at was Staten Island. They didn't have a Chick-fil-A on the whole island. So when I finally came back to Louisiana, it was awesome because I could finally get something that was different.
Okay.
So ever since then, I've been hooked. That's my favorite place.
Because we've eaten some amazing food down here in the South that I'm like, crawfish? Okay.
I got sick one time from crawfish and I've never eaten it since.
Oh,
I got a stomach bug and never again will I eat
crawfish. Our friends in Lafayette, Catherine and Chris, they treated us to an incredible crawfish meal the other night, and we had bags of them, and it was unbelievable. The food down here is the best.
Yeah, there's certainly some really, really good food here.
Yeah.
Let's see. You're both Protestant converts, as am I. Is there anything from Protestantism you genuinely miss? I don't miss specifics, but it's difficult how different socializing works. For me personally, there's nothing that I found in Protestantism that's not in Catholicism. However, what I could say is sometimes they do better at some things than we tend to do today. For instance, I think sometimes there is, at least in some quarters of Protestantism, maybe a little bit more church discipline. Again, some quarters. I have to highly qualify that because there's plenty parts of Protestantism where there isn't church discipline. And also an emphasis on the gospel and an emphasis on scripture. In some places of Catholicism, that's highlighted. In some places of Protestantism, that's not highlighted. But in some places of Catholicism, it's not highlighted as much as should be. And then some parts of Protestantism, it is highlighted. So it just kind of depends on what we're talking about. But that's something that I've kind of noticed. What do you think?
I agree with that 100%, because you got to remember, guys, Protestantism isn't one big category. It's a universe. So you might say, oh, I miss the contemporary worship of Protestantism. But if you go to an Anglican church, you don't get that. Or you might say, I miss the in-depth Bible study of the sermons in the Protestant church. Well, there's a big difference between going to like a verse-by-verse study at a Calvary Chapel where you're going to have a 50-minute expository sermon versus going to like a mainline liberal denomination where they're going to read a paragraph of Chicken Soup for the Soul or something like that as the sermon. So for me, I agree with Michael. There's not things that I go, oh, I really missed that. But there are some things that I wish we as Catholics did better. But to be honest with you, I love being Catholic so much that even those things that I would maybe categorize as missing, they're so overwhelmed by the things about Catholicism that I love so much. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, well, the Protestants are so much better at community or at welcoming people. Well, that's not necessarily true. And I can speak from experience. On our rosary trips, we have experienced so much welcoming community and family everywhere we've gone. The people have welcomed us in like we are closer than family.
Sure.
And I remember saying to my wife, I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen the Protestant equivalent of what happens when you get people together to pray the rosary in community. People will drive hours to come and do that because they know we're coming, and they'll come together to pray. And it's like, I'm not bringing guitars and crazy stuff. There's like no gimmick. I remember when I was scheduling this trip, one church said, okay, Keith, we just want to make sure we understand what you're doing here. You're just coming to pray the rosary. Like, you're not promoting something. You're not like charging us money. You're not doing, I'm like, nope, we're just coming to pray the rosary. That's it. Yeah. And I share some meditations a little bit with that, like I do on the Rosary Crew. And people are like, that's awesome. I don't know the equivalent of that in Protestantism. So there's so many things that I think we could say, hey, we do better. I remember we used to go to these prayer breakfasts.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, why is there so little prayer at the prayer breakfast? You go to these things in our city where they get all the evangelical churches together to have a prayer breakfast, and they'd bring in like some speaker who's like a retired NFL player. And I'm thinking, why are we bringing a speaker into the prayer breakfast?
Yeah.
And then we'd have this big breakfast. There'd be like a big infomercial for a bunch of stuff. And then a guy would get up and give a 40-minute talk. And then at the end, there would be like 4 or 5 minutes of prayer. And they call that a prayer breakfast. If you go to a Catholic prayer breakfast, first of all, forget the breakfast. You're just going to pray. Maybe at the end you get breakfast. But like, you go to a Catholic prayer group, guess what people do there?
Pray. Yeah.
So I've been like more blessed by the things that I've seen.
Yeah.
That we do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's just been better.
Yeah, I don't miss Protestantism. Everything good that I've found there, I find in Catholicism is so much more, especially liturgy. So, yeah. Keith Nestor was just with Gabriel Castillo, who transformed my prayer life. So happy to see Keith here too.
Yeah. Amen.
Drew the Catholic says, hey, now Chick-fil-A is the Lord's chicken.
The Lord's chicken?
I saw a meme of Baby Yoda, and it said something about Chick-fil-A being the Lord's Chicky sandwich or something like that.
Full disclosure, I never go to Chick-fil-A. I'm not anti-Chick-fil-A. There's one like a half mile from my house, and it's always full of people, and I'm always like, okay, great, that's fine, but I don't understand like the religion of Chick-fil-A, but that's great. Have a chicken sandwich.
Chipotle mayo and sweet potato fries is the bomb.
Boom! I love Chipotle mayo. I'll make that all day long.
Has anyone mentioned garlic fries yet?
Yes. I think people are getting hungry.
I know, right?
Everyone's still hungry from yesterday.
High Church Anglicanism is nice, but not quite Catholicism, so it's sugar-free ketchup. That's a good point. I agree. I concede that. Sugar-free ketchup. Have you ever had that before?
Hopefully not.
No. I think I've also had like ketchup with no salt. It was also really
I have sugar-free barbecue sauce because I did a no sugar thing for last year, not for Lent, but just like the whole year. I didn't eat a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And I love barbecue. So it's like finding a brand of sugar-free barbecue sauce was like a godsend.
Let's see.
I've never noticed that your channel has all of these food references.
We do. We had an entire stream where we talked nothing about various kinds of pizzas. I don't know how we got onto it, but we all of a sudden got onto pizzas, and we had a whole discussion on that. And I don't really remember what the outcome was.
I'm having like these weird, like, I don't know what you want to call it. Maybe it's a word of knowledge from the Lord of like cooking show with Michael Lofton,
Let's do it. Let's see. I've been to those breakfasts when I was Protestant. We had one about church unity, and all the pastors were talking about football, and priest was talking about evangelism.
Maybe your prayer breakfast was different than mine, but all the ones we went to, that was the least amount of thing on the itinerary was actual prayer.
How are you guys with tolerating spicy food?
Bring it.
Yeah, I have a very high tolerance.
I love spicy food. I love spicy Thai food. I love spicy Mexican food. I'm all about it.
The pizzas came up probably because pizzas can taste like cardboard. I think actually somebody did bring up the cardboard reference in relation to the pizza discussion.
Yeah, that could have been a thing.
Let's see. As long as it isn't Tiger King pizza.
I haven't watched Tiger King. I'm sorry, I have not seen that. Oh, man. I have not seen I asked my wife one day, we were looking for something to watch, and I don't know how, but I said to her, I'm like, do you want to try this Tiger King thing everybody's looking at? And she's like we looked at like the little thumbnail of
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and she's like, I don't think so. So I've never seen it.
Listen, I totally understand the reservations if you see nothing but thumbnails, but I guarantee you'll enjoy it. I didn't think I was going to, but this was when COVID happened, so it's like there's nothing else to do because we were in lockdowns. So I just watched it and I was hooked after just one
Really?
episode. It's hilarious. But anyways, what they're talking about here is Tiger King. He's a very, very eccentric individual.
I've seen what he looks like.
Yeah, very eccentric. But anyways, he had like a pizza shop right next to the zoo, literally right next door to the tiger cages. And he does this funny commercial where he's talking about, come to Zooters and you can have the best pizza over here, homemade with some cold beer. And it was the most classic pizza commercial I've ever seen. And probably the best thing because it was just so hilarious as far as how bad it was done. So anyways, that's what they're talking about.
Okay.
And he showed the pizza in the commercial and he's like, come here for the world's finest pizza. And it was the most disgusting looking pizza I've ever seen. So
Okay, I'll try to check that out.
But don't watch the commercial until you see the show. Okay. You won't appreciate it as much until you know all about Tiger King. Okay, so let's see. David says, I'm big on highly spicy foods too. If you ever get the chance, I'd love to buy either of you dinner at some place that is going to bring the heat.
baby.
Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. Let's see. Looking through here. Y'all send more chat questions, by the way. What is the Tiger King pizza? Jasters asked. Yeah, I mean, it's again, just type in Tiger King Zooters, Zooters. I guess that's a contraction of Hooters and Zoo. I don't know where he got the name from, but it's called Zooters. So type in Zooters commercial. Yeah, I see more comments, but I'm not seeing questions. How much money did Bishop Barron pay Keith to pretend the cardboard background is real?
I'm still waiting for my check. But after I pulled the books off the shelf, maybe he's not going to hook me up now.
What are y'all's thoughts on the Ordinariate? Sorry to change the topic. You know, I originally entered the church in 2012 through the Ordinariate, but it quickly in the local area fizzled out. The community never really got off the ground. But in my exposure to the Ordinariate, it's an awesome liturgy. You ever been to an Ordinariate liturgy?
Never been to an Ordinariate.
So effectively, for those of y'all who might not be aware, back in was it 2011 or 2012 that Pope Benedict released Anglicanorum Cetibus, which is a document where he says, okay, you Anglicans who want to become Catholics, that's fine. You can come into the church and you can keep your liturgy and your Anglican patrimony. We're going to make a few tweaks to the liturgy here and there to ensure that it's orthodox, but you effectively get to keep your Anglican patrimony while in the Catholic Church, kind of like your Byzantine Eastern Catholic rites, sort of like that. But technically, this is still within the Roman rite, so it's not a separate rite, but it's a particular use of the Roman rite. And those liturgies are just done very, very well, very great expressions of the Roman rite in my experience.
I've only been to a Novus Ordo and TLM. I've never been to an Eastern liturgy. there's none near me.
Yeah.
I have to probably drive to Chicago or someplace in Wisconsin or something, which I would do.
Sure.
And I'm sure I will sometime.
Yeah. What is involved in the Great Fast? Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on what version of it you're doing. They have stricter versions. But in fact, what I'll do is I'll put in the show notes, I'm going to paste a link where you can kind of see what my eparchy does. Because it does distinguish between simple abstinence and other forms, and there's various things that you do on particular days. And it's a little bit different than the Great Fast in the Western tradition. However, what I'm going to paste is going to be more of your typical parish version of the Great Fast. It's not necessarily what you would see in a monastery. where those tend to be much more rigorous. In the Eastern tradition, the fasting tradition is incredibly rigorous if you follow it to the T. But you would effectively have to live in a monastery to really do it.
Wow.
It's very hard to do it practically as a layman, especially living in the United States. And so there's a fair amount of differences, but I'll add that to the show notes. Um, the Faith of Church said, when I converted, I almost became part of the ordinariate. That's interesting. I forgot. Do you live?
He goes to TLM now.
Is that right? But do you live in the United States? Because I didn't know that they. Well, actually, they do have one in Australia. They also have one in the UK. Okay, that makes sense. In Phoenix, got it. Keith, next time you're in Houston, go swing by the Cathedral of Our Lady of Walsingham. That's the Ordinariate's Cathedral in the U.S. Very beautiful. I've been to it, and it's awesome. They have a relic of Thomas Becket there as well. See, Anglicanorum Chaetibus came out in 2009. Yeah. I was okay. So let's see. I do live in Phoenix. Good. Jaser says, I went to a Ukrainian Catholic church once when I was younger, but I remember almost none of it. I look forward to going to one once again. I actually went to a Ukrainian Catholic church maybe a month or so ago when I drove up to Chicago.
Really?
Yeah. It was really cool. Yeah, that was in Chicago. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it was actually a cathedral.
How is that different from the Byzantine?
Well, it's within the Byzantine tradition, but the Ukrainian Catholic liturgy versus like Byzantine Catholic, it's almost no different.
Yeah.
It was the same. However, what I did notice is, at least the Byzantine Catholic parishes that I've been to, there's a lot of participation of the faithful. Whereas in the cathedral in the Ukrainian liturgy, it was mostly just the priest and the cantor.
Okay.
I didn't hear any kind of participation in the congregational chants and singing from the congregation.
Okay.
So but the liturgy itself was the same. I just noticed that people were more reserved there, and that could just be a big city thing, you know?
Yeah.
You know, probably not necessarily.
Well, you have to hit me up next time you come to Chicago. I'll meet you over there, and we'll go to something like that.
Yeah, let's see. I just joined the Ordinary and I got my membership letter, so I was curious on y'all's opinion. I love the liturgy and pray the daily office. I have a parish nearby, so I thank God for that. Yeah, absolutely. And don't they have the St. Gregory the Great prayer book? Is that the one you're referring to with the daily office? Maybe clarify for me, but I have a copy of it actually behind you over there, and it's a really good prayer book. We have a lot of Byzantine Ukrainian Catholic churches here in Toronto. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that there was a lot. Unluckily, when I visited, the liturgy was in Ukrainian instead of English. Sometimes you'll see that with Ukrainian Catholic churches. Sometimes it's in Ukrainian. Sometimes it's just in the vernacular, you know, so English. Just kind of depends on the parish. VM says, when I went to Ukrainian liturgy, also to the cantor and the priest were the ones singing. I'm in London, so maybe a big city thing. I think it's kind of sounds. Have you noticed less participation from the faithful in bigger cities compared to smaller parish cities?
I haven't noticed a difference in that. No, okay. I mean, it depends.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
But I haven't noticed it based on size of city, but I've never really thought of it like that.
Yeah, let's see. I do remember a lot of singing being done only by the servers, but I went there with my school, so the lack of singing from the clergy was definitely due to ignorance. Yeah, understood. Well, we're at an hour here, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But hey, Keith, any concluding thoughts, any parting words? And by the way, of course, put in a plug for anything that you're working on.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Michael, for what you do and for responding to my request to come and visit you. And it's been awesome being here. And I want to just thank all of you guys out there for supporting Michael and his channel. He's doing his thing. He's doing God's thing. And just keep supporting him. He's walking that road, trying to do what God's called him to do. And it's a tough road to walk, but thank you for supporting him. If you want to pray the rosary with us, I've got 2 YouTube channels. One is just devoted to the rosary. It's called Rosary Crew with Keith Nestor. We live stream every single day. That's what my wife and I are doing out here. And a couple hours or whatever time it is at 5 o'clock, about 2 hours, we're going to be doing the rosary live from Michael's chapel. But we do that every day. And then, of course, my regular channel is just called Keith Nestor, where I do lots of different things on there on YouTube. So
Awesome.
Appreciate that. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. This has been fun.
Yeah, this is great. And thank you so much for coming on and doing this.
Oh,
It was
my pleasure.
truly an honor,
It's good to
Keith.
be
Really,
here.
absolutely. And yeah, looking forward to the rosary in 2 hours. We'll see y'all on Keith's channel. Thank y'all for watching. Hit that like button and the subscribe button. All right, that's going to do it. We will see y'all in just a few hours. God bless. Are you confused about how Catholic teaching authority works? With encyclicals, papal bulls, councils, and many other things, it's easy to get confused on what is authoritative and what is not. Fortunately, at maximusinstitute.com, I have prepared a course explaining the magisterium from A to Z. Visit the website and check out the course, Understanding the Magisterium, for more information. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. God bless.